Okay, I'm going to get started with our class today by welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment, the teachings of the Buddha to be able to train your mind and make your way to the enlightened mental state. We start with meditation, and then afterwards I give a talk from this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And today we're in chapter 23. We're towards the end of this program, where this chapter is titled Symbolism of the Teachings, Reminders Through Imagery. This is a really fun chapter where you learn about the symbols and the artwork and the architecture of Buddhist art and Buddhist temples so that you can understand the symbolism behind it. And then when you view Buddhist art or you go to a temple, you actually understand what you're seeing. Because sometimes when people walk into a temple, it's just like, oh, that's beautiful, or oh, that's pretty. Let me take a picture of that. But there's actually meaning behind the things that you see at the temples. So I'm going to show you guys some pictures and share some things with you guys to help you understand the symbolism as it relates to the teachings of the Buddha and why those types of symbols have been used and how they've been used throughout history. So I'm going to have a lot of fun sharing these different pictures with you guys, and you guys will get a chance to learn that so that when you go visit temples and you see Buddhist artwork, it'll have more meaning to you when you actually see these things. So if you'd like to join for meditation, we'll do that first, and then I'll have this talk with you about sharing the symbolism of the teachings, reminders through imagery. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start is with some chanting. This helps to ease the mind into meditation and help you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. We have the chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. If you'd like to get a chanting sheet, you're more than welcome to, because you're welcome to chant along with me if you like. If you decide to get a chanting sheet, understand that these chants, there's nothing mystical or magical about them. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship or anything like that. It's not prayer or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything he taught was oral, because they didn't have the technology to write things down at the time. So they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally so that they could commit the teachings to memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting that there isn't anything mystical or magical here. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship or prayer or anything like that. We don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory anymore, because we have books. We have audiobooks, videos, podcasts. We have all these things to be able to help us document the teachings. But they didn't have that during the Buddha's lifetime 2,500 years ago. So that's why they used chanting to recite his teachings every 2 weeks and commit them to memory. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of respect and gratitude and appreciation for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death, because if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger, sadness, frustration, and all the other discontent feelings to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, and this is a permanent mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So the students most likely created these because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect here, and a Buddha would have eliminated their ego. An enlightened being doesn't walk around with arrogance and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be arrogance if somebody did this. So I'm sure that the Buddha didn't create these chants himself, but I chant them not because of any other reason than it helps you to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. It does help you cultivate other qualities of mind, but this is the main reason why I chant it with students. And there's different courses and different retreats where I teach people about the chanting, and I actually help you to develop this practice. But if you like to just chant along, as I mentioned, the chanting sheets are on the cabinet over there. You're welcome to get a chanting sheet, and you're welcome to chant along if you'd like. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to be able to help you understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating. So you'll hear me kind of saying instructions to be able to help you to learn how to meditate while we're actually meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. Everyone here at the temple and anyone online who's joining us, we can just all be meditating together. I'm sure you're going to hear sounds during that period of time. You might hear a bird chirping, a dog barking. You might hear a car go by. Someone might cough or sneeze. As long as your mind doesn't crave permanent silence when you hear a sound, you won't be annoyed. But if you have a craving, if you have a desire for permanent silence, you will cause your mind to be annoyed and frustrated when you hear a sound. It's not possible for you to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet, because the world is impermanent. You're going to constantly experience change in the world. But the mind's craving for permanence will cause you to be frustrated, agitated, and annoyed. Oftentimes people think that it's other people who's causing them to be frustrated or agitated or angry. But in reality, it's your own mind, because the mind's craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way in the world, not understanding that everything is impermanent and constantly changing. So during the meditation where we're meditating, you'll probably hear a sound here or there. Just understand that it is impermanent. That sound will arise, it'll change, and it'll fade away. And as long as you're not craving permanence, your mind will be completely peaceful and joyful during that period of time. After that, then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to learn about symbolism of the teachings, reminders through imagery. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because they're helpful for different reasons. Your body can't be in the same position permanently because of impermanence. So you're going to need these different positions at different times, and I teach them in the various courses and retreats that I share. But today I'll just give you a little bit of guidance on the seated position, because this is oftentimes where people are learning in the seated position. So whatever I share with you, these are just recommendations and suggestions for you to consider, because everybody's not going to sit in exactly the same way. Again, that would be permanence. Instead, all of our bodies are different, and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. But I'll give you some suggestions that can kind of help you. People oftentimes sit on the floor, in a chair, on a bench, a sofa, a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. Some people like this because it softens your seat and makes it more comfortable. If you're bringing your legs together in the cross-leg position, you like to do that just lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this will impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And again, it allows the circulation to flow. So that might be something you consider. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you would like to do that, that's an option for you. You could do that. But again, it's not about permanence. Everybody's going to find different things to be comfortable. So there's other options here too. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And for anybody who might be in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, it's the same thing. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then for anyone who's sitting in a chair or some other seating device, you can put your hands in your arms wherever you're comfortable as well, because there isn't just one permanent fixed way to actually sit. It's finding what's comfortable for you. And everybody's going to find different things to be comfortable. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With your sternum up and your shoulders back, it'll keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Because what you're doing during meditation is you're actively training the mind. And having your mind attentive and alert while you're training the mind is very helpful. There's certain unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating, and there's certain wholesome qualities that you're cultivating through meditation. So this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. And you're doing this either in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. So you'd like your mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Having the sternum up and the shoulders back helps the mind to be attentive and alert. It also helps you to be able to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So you'll find that is improved as well. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'll come back in with some guidance to be able to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami สวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. As I was mentioning, today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment as taught by the Buddha. This program is a 7-month program where we meet each Sunday and Wednesday, either here at the temple or people join us online as well. I meet at 9 a.m. here at the temple and then I live stream that. But in the evenings at 9 p.m., I do it as well in my home studio where I live stream that because the people that are maybe in Europe right now are sleeping and they're not able to attend this class. But all these things are recorded, so I'm doing this twice a day so that anybody who would like to attend a live class in the world has the opportunity to do that based on their time zone. But then also, even if you can't attend the live class, you can watch the recordings to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. Everything is available for you at no cost, whether it's the classes, the courses, retreats, the books, the audiobooks, videos, podcasts, even personal guidance. You can get help along the path. What enlightenment is where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. An individual has trained their mind, uprooting certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and now the mind performs optimally. Where right now you might experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings are actually being caused by one's own mind. And when you understand this through the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can learn it, examine it, investigate it, you can reflect on it to independently verify that what he's teaching you is true. And then you can practice his teachings, integrating them into your life so that then you can actually uproot these pollutions. You'll see that your mind is becoming more and more peaceful peaceful, more and more joyful as you're making your way to enlightenment. You'll notice that the mind is more focused, concentrated, has clarity of mind and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships start to blossom, that you're not having bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships any longer. Because when you're doing that, it's actually coming from your own mind. It's not coming from other people. It's your own mind that's choosing to do that. But there is a better way of life, and that's the way that the Buddha taught. By the time you get to enlightenment, you can't even experience a bad mood anymore. It's just not possible. The mind is physically not able to experience a bad mood because the pollutions have been uprooted, and the mind is now peaceful and joyful. It's bright, it's radiant, it's uplifted, it's cheerful. There's gladness in the mind. There's unconditioned happiness where it's just always happy and always joyful. And again, this comes through training of the mind. So in this program, over a 7-month period, I'm helping students to build a foundation little by little each Sunday and each Wednesday. And then, of course, I have courses and retreats where you can get a larger dose of information in a shorter period of time. And students oftentimes attend those in order to be able to learn in maybe a 5-day period or however long the course or retreat is. You can do that, and you can see the programs that we have on the bulletin board over there. And you can also see it on our website as well. If you go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, you'll see the events and the courses and things that we have. So here at the end of this group learning program, as I mentioned, chapter 23 of this book, because this is the book that we use to guide us in the program, we're in chapter 23 today, which is called Symbolism of the Teachings, Reminders Through Imagery. Once you understand a little bit about the teachings of the Buddha and you start understanding the symbolism that the Buddha used during his lifetime to be able to help students to remember his teachings, this can make it really meaningful for you to visit temples and look at Buddhist artwork and things like this, and you'll see architecture and things like this that'll really have meaning for you. It's like the temple comes to life when you understand these symbols and artwork and architecture, where before knowing these things, you might just go to a temple and be like, ah, that's beautiful, or oh, that's pretty, let me take a nice picture, right? But when you understand the symbolism and the artwork and the architecture behind what you're seeing at the temples, it's almost like the temple walls start speaking to you. And here in Thailand, when a member of the community goes on a holiday, for example, it's not uncommon for them to visit a bunch of temples. So like say you're from Chiang Mai and you go to Phuket for holiday, you might actually go visit a few temples as a person that's from Thailand who's interested in the Buddha's teachings, because each one of these temples are very different. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've never seen 2 temples that are exactly the same. They're all different. So each time you go into a temple, you can look at the artwork, the architecture, the symbolism, and it kind of speaks to you. It's almost like a scavenger hunt, going around the temple and seeing what kind of things that you can see. And like I mentioned, it's almost like the temple walls start speaking to you if you understand the things that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to share these things with you and help you guys to understand what you're seeing in artwork and architecture and symbolism. And you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions that you like as we go through our class. If you would like to ask questions here at the temple, you can use the microphones there at the white bowl. Just get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. You can hold this up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you spoke here without a microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online. And if you get a microphone, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question. If someone's online and would like to ask a question, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section. I'll see that and answer your question. And then if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. So this first symbol, this first image that I'll share with you guys is something that's very common that you might see in various places as you travel throughout the Buddhist world. I refer to this as the Na, but there's other ways that people refer to this as well. You might see it on statues. You might see it on those fans. If you ever see the fans that the monks hold when they're doing the chanting, you might see it on, some people even get a decal on their shirts. I've seen people with tattoos of these things. You might see these all kinds of different places. What this is doing is it's symbolizing your journey to enlightenment, when you're progressing to this enlightened mental state where the mind is completely peaceful and joyful. The way that this starts is it starts right here and it goes around in a circle. And this is symbolizing the cycle of rebirth, being reborn over and over and over and over again. And you notice here that the line is very thick and very broad. It's very dark, because when you're lacking wisdom about the natural laws that the Buddha taught, the world can be very difficult. It can be a real struggle. Your mind can be angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed and all these other discontent feelings. But as you're training your mind and you're starting to awaken to enlightenment, that's not the case. But when you're first starting out in the world, it can be pretty dark. It can be pretty dark in this world, right? There's a certain amount of misery and grief and sorrow and displeasure and despair. But getting to enlightenment, this is where your mind is bright and cheerful and uplifted. So as you're making your way on this path, notice how as you're making your way, you're going forward, but then you're going to take a couple steps back. Right? You're going forward, but then you're kind of having some missteps, because this is common on the path to enlightenment. You don't just start on the path to enlightenment and go straight to enlightenment. It's a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you experience on the path. So you're going to have these missteps where you kind of walk backwards, right? But then as you do that, you learn and you grow and you develop and cultivate wisdom, and you're making more forward progress. But then you're going to have another misstep, and then you're going to make more forward progress and a misstep and forward progress and a misstep. But notice it's narrowing in closer and closer and closer, because as you're cultivating wisdom, you're getting narrowed in on what enlightenment is and how to actually get to it. And ultimately, as you narrow in on this, eventually you make your way to enlightenment. And this is where the mind is getting to this enlightened mental state where you're now at a higher consciousness, and now the mind is going to be functioning optimally. And that's what this is symbolizing. And this is the most common one that you will see in the world. But I included these other ones here too to show you impermanence and show you that different artists represent things in different ways. This is the one that you'll see most commonly. But because of impermanence, you'll see different people represent this in different ways. So when I Googled this to be able to get some images for this presentation and for the book, I also found these as well. So you can see this is essentially similar, but it's not quite as clear. It doesn't have quite the same meaning as going around the cycle of rebirth and all the other things, but you can see some similarities here. So you might see this in artwork or architecture. Sometimes they put this on a statue of the Buddha right here in between the eyebrows, symbolizing what's called the third eye. When you're making your way to enlightenment, at the beginning of your journey, you have what's called a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. Both of these minds are polluted. You're aware of what's going on in your conscious mind, but the subconscious mind tends to be more heavily polluted, and you're not aware oftentimes of what's going on in the subconscious mind. If you've ever been around people before and you just blurted something out and you were like, why did I say that? I don't think that way, right? Maybe you said some offhanded thing and you're like, whoa, that's strange. Like, I don't think that way. That's your subconscious mind throwing things up into your conscious mind, and there's no filter there, and you just kind of blurt it out. Well, by the time you get to what's called the second jhana, there's these 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through as you're training the mind, and then there's 4 stages of enlightenment that an individual experiences. But by the time you get to that second jhana, which is one of the preliminary phases that the mind experiences, this is where you're experiencing what's called unification of the mind or oneness of mind. There are enhanced qualities in these jhanas that you're experiencing at all times of your day. And when you experience unification of the mind or oneness of mind, there's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. It's just one mind. You can fully observe the entire mind. You won't be anywhere and just kind of blurt something out to others and just be like, what was that? Like I don't think that way. You won't have that kind of thing happening because you'll have full awareness of the entire mind. This is referred to as awakening the third eye, or the inner eye, or the inward looking eye. Sometimes people refer to it in different ways, that your mind is more awake at that point when you no longer have a subconscious mind because you have full awareness of the entire mind. You become more introspective. You look inward. Rather than blaming the outside world for the struggles and difficulties that you experience, you start to become more inwardly focused, because this is where the real growth and development in your life is going to occur. As long as you're blaming other people around you for the things that you experience, you'll never improve your life because you're not cultivating the wisdom to make better decisions. Because what you experience in your day-to-day life is based on decisions that you're making. And when you can cultivate wisdom, you can make different decisions and you can experience different results. But if we go around the world blaming other people for the things that we experience, then we never get to cultivate wisdom. We never make different decisions, and we keep experiencing the same results over and over and over again. So if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But you can't do that if you're blaming other people, because the mind will think that, oh, it's their fault that I'm experiencing this, rather than looking at your own mind to figure out what it is that you have a lack of wisdom about that you need to improve in order to make better decisions. So when you're getting to that point where you have this third eye that has awoken or opened up, we call this opening of the third eye, or the divine eye, or the inward looking eye. So that's why they oftentimes will put this symbol at the third eye on a statue of the Buddha, because it's symbolizing enlightenment, awakening of the mind in this inward looking eye. And you might see it other places as well, not just the statues. So do you guys have any questions about this particular symbol or the journey to enlightenment or anything that I've been talking about so far? Remember, if you guys could use the microphones here, and then for anyone online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions you like by just unmuting your microphone. So yes, sir. Looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I very much agree with what you said. It is you who make yourself paranoid or upset, not the things around you. There's a situation I'm experiencing. So I have very light sleep, and the kid upstairs make a lot of noise every night, and I try to communicate with them, but the parents just won't behave their case. So even though I have a calm mind, but the truth is that the thing still like disturb my sleep. So how will what you said help me with my situation?
Sure. This is where you're living at home?
Yeah.
Okay. So everything we experience is a result of our decisions. So you've decided to live in that place. And while it might be unfortunate and that this is occurring where this person upstairs, this child, is being rambunctious or whatever and making a certain amount of noise, the mind wants things to be a certain way. That's the mind craving permanence and having expectation. And sure, it's wonderful living in a place where there isn't any sounds above you and you can experience a certain amount of sleep. That's a wonderful place to be, that's going to help you and so forth and so on. But you are making a decision to live in that place, and you've got to decide for yourself whether you should continue to stay there or you should leave, because you can't change other people. It's not possible for you to force others to change. And this person, this family is choosing to function in this way, and you're not going to be able to change what they do. All you can do is change your decisions, and you could potentially choose to move somewhere else, because if you're clinging or holding on or you're attached to the place where you're living now, you'll find it very difficult to leave. You won't want to leave. But if you're willing to let go, you can let go and move to another place. And let's just say that you have another 11 months on your lease, and you're not able to afford to move because maybe you have a deposit and you have other things like this. If that was the case and you can't leave, what I would suggest somebody to do is start to practice generosity with the family upstairs, is bringing them certain gifts like chocolate or fruit or things like this. Not because you're expecting anything from them, not because you want anything from them, but when you start making friends with them in this way, they'll find it more and more difficult to actually do these things, because now this is like a family member, this is a friend, somebody who they have fond affection for, and they'll be less and less interested in doing what they're doing. So you could go up there and just give them a gift and say, hey, this is for you guys, I'd just like to give you this, but don't expect that they're going to stop making the sounds, because that would be another craving, desire, attachment that your mind is now forming, and it's not practicing pure generosity. Whenever you're practicing generosity, it needs to be without any expectation of anything in return. But let's just say you've now given them gifts 2, 3, 4 times, right? Maybe on the 3rd or 4th visit, you kind of check in with them and say, hey, how's your family doing? I noticed that it's been a little bit loud in the evening times. Have you guys been getting any complaints from anybody about difficulty sleeping or anything like this? Right? So you're not trying to change them. You're not trying to force them. You're not putting expectations on them. You're just kind of asking them questions that brings to their awareness of what other people are experiencing around them. And then it's up to them to choose of whether or not they're going to change or not. And it's up to you to decide whether you're going to stay in that place or leave. So when you take control of your own decision making, then you realize that you're not stuck in this position. And now the perspective of the mind changes. Rather than feeling like you're stuck, you can feel like, oh, I have decisions here. I can choose to practice generosity with them. I can be friendly with them. I can make relationship with them. I can check in and see how they're doing. I can choose to leave. This is an option for me as well. That way, your mind changing this perspective, you don't feel stuck. And now you see that you have choices that you can make that change the situation. But when you're experiencing discontentedness, like you haven't mentioned this, but let's just say you were frustrated or annoyed or agitated about this situation, that's being caused by your own mind. It's not the noise that's upstairs. In fact, I wouldn't even refer to it as a noise because a noise has a negative connotation. It's just a sound that is occurring. And what the mind does is it has what's called agreeable contact or disagreeable contact. Based on the mind's craving, the desire, the things that the mind wants or expects, whenever you're experiencing contact through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself, you will see things either as agreeable, that is agreeable to you, and you will get pleasant feelings, maybe happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when you have contact that you consider to be disagreeable, then the mind will experience sadness, anger, frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and things of this nature. So this is because of the mind's desire for things to be a certain way permanently. Like maybe if I'm in my apartment, I want permanent quietness, where it's not going to happen. There's a young child that lives upstairs, so you are going to experience some sounds because this child is a child, and that's what children do. So that's where you need to make the decision. How much is this really impacting me? Do I need to make friends with them? Do I need to choose to leave? Is there any other options that I can do here? But understand, doing any of that stuff, it's only going to help you get the point to where you can sleep, but it's not going to change whether you get annoyed or frustrated. Because in that same situation, with the craving, desire, attachment in your mind's going to hear a sound and it's going to be discontent. So one of the things that I could suggest for somebody, if they were also interested in staying in this environment, is they can train their mind to experience these sounds, where right now the mind sees these things as disagreeable, and the mind can be exposed to these types of sounds in order to train the mind to get to a point where it's comfortable. Now, if this is an extended amount of noise or sounds, say it's like 3, 4, 5 hours a day, this is quite extensive. But if it's just like 5 minutes or 10 minutes here or there, this is something that you could train your mind to overcome, where you could like pull up some audio files on YouTube or a podcast or something, and you could put that into your ears, either through headphones or earbuds or whatever, or speakers, and you could train your mind focusing on your breath with your eyes closed. And then when you hear that sound, you train your mind to cut off any annoyance or frustration and keep coming back to the breath and coming back to the breath and coming back to the breath. And this will essentially desensitize your mind to that sound, whatever that sound is. So you can take any of these number of approaches, and these will all help you to be able to take decisions for yourself that you can do that is allowing you to overcome this situation, rather than just, kind of, you haven't said this, but what sometimes people might do is blame the other people, rather than just kind of seeing, what can I do to make this situation different for me, right? That's what you would like to be able to retain that ability to do, because everybody has that ability if you have the wisdom of what to do.
Thank you. I see what you mean.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else you guys would like to ask? I'm going to check online here, see if we have any questions. Welcome to all of you guys online. Oh, yes, Doche, go ahead, sir.
Question about the Na. Is that something that came about specifically in Thailand? And do we know maybe when that came about or when it was popularized? Just curious about that.
I don't know that this came about in Thailand. I don't know the time frame or history about it. I suspect that this was happening during the lifetime of the Buddha because the Buddha used multiple symbols. Because as I was mentioning when we were talking about chanting, there wasn't the ability to write things down during the lifetime of the Buddha, but he did have the ability to use symbols, right? Because the language that they spoke, it wasn't an oral language, or it wasn't a written language, because the technology to write things down didn't exist. So they had no use for a script. They didn't even have a script for the language. It was just an oral language. But they used symbols like this and others that you guys are going to learn about to help people remember the teachings. So if you were in a discourse with the Buddha and he was teaching you how, you're in this cycle of rebirth and you're going to need to gain this wisdom. And as you're gaining this wisdom, you're going to be progressing forward on the path, but you are going to have missteps because you can't be perfect from day one. But more and more, you need to narrow in on the wisdom that it takes to get to enlightenment. If you understood this about the path to enlightenment, and then he showed you this image and said, hey, this is what represents this particular path. Well, now let's just say you saw this on the side of a barn somewhere, right? Now you see that and it reminds you like, oh yeah, that's what the Buddha was teaching. Yeah, I remember that. And it kind of brings the teachings up to the forefront of your mind. And now you have a better ability to retain that understanding for the future. So I don't know the 100% origin of this one. Some of the other ones I do, but this one, I don't know that it was created in Thailand or when it was created or how it was created, but I suspect that it was in use during the lifetime of the Buddha, and that's why we still use it today. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I see somebody mentioned that there's no audio. I think that that might be on your side if you can hear me, because I see that other people can see the audio and I see that I have audio here on the computer. So it might just be on your side if you're still there. Perhaps you can hear me by now. All right. So here's the next one. The next one is oftentimes referred to as a Dhamma wheel. You might see this in temples. In fact, I've got it right here behind me. You can see this one here. So this here is a Dhamma wheel back here behind the head of the Buddha. And then here's a Dhamma wheel as well. The word Dhamma translates to teachings. The word Dhamma is a Pali word. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, and that's the language that people study to understand the original teachings of the Buddha. But you don't need to understand the Pali language nowadays in order to get to enlightenment, because these teachings have been translated into English and other languages that you're able to actually learn and progress within a native language that you understand. I teach in English, of course, because it's an international language and I can service a large group of people across the world, but there's other languages that this has been translated into as well. But this word Dhamma, it means teachings, right? But to say teachings wheel kind of sounds a little bit odd. It sounds strange. So people tend to refer to it as a Dhamma wheel. I use as much English as possible because it helps the widest audience of people to be able to understand what I'm teaching. But with this particular thing, I still use the word Dhamma wheel because it just makes more sense. What this is another symbol that the Buddha used in order to represent his teachings. This circle here, this represents the cycle of rebirth, helping an individual understand that they're constantly being reborn over and over and over again. Now, nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is based in belief. It's not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Everything that the Buddha taught is independently verifiable, including the cycle of rebirth. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. Just right now, you might not be able to remember and recall your previous lives. But as you're moving to this higher consciousness and you're getting the pollution out of the mind, oftentimes people will have observation of their past life and they will start remembering their past lives. So if you start to train your mind and you notice that, you'll understand that that's normal. So there's plenty of other ways besides that you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. In this book series, in the 13 books that I share that are the original words of the Buddha, in volume 11, chapter 105, I share 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. So right now, you might not have the wisdom to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, but you can gain that wisdom if you would like to. And it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because this isn't something that you need to verify right up front. It's important to focus on the core central teachings of the Buddha first, right? So you can set aside the cycle of rebirth, because what's happened in the past is in the past. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. Right now, if you experience discontentedness like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, you would like to focus on that and train your mind to uproot that. And learning and practicing, understanding the cycle of rebirth, while it is part of the path to enlightenment, it's not something you need to do right up front. Usually after a year and a half, 2 years or so, that's when somebody starts looking at that. So that's why it's in volume 11, chapter 105. But if someone would like to go look at it, they're welcome to go look at it if they'd like. But that's what this circle here is helping you to understand, is this constant rebirth over and over. Over and over and over and over and over again. But then these spokes here are representing what's called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha that is the path to enlightenment. It's the path to freeing the mind of its pollutions so that you can experience peace and joy. By the time you learn and practice the Eightfold Path closely, over a multiple year journey, you will be able to purify your mind of the pollutions and get to the point where you're seeing the peacefulness and the joy coming into the mind. And that's happening gradually over time. It's not like you learn something and then like 5 years later, you experience the benefits. As you're learning and implementing his teachings, slowly but surely, you're gradually seeing improvement to the condition of your mind. I've seen some students that have learned with me in 5-day courses, and they come in the morning of the third day, having learned 2 days, and they are already seeing improvement because they're processing the world and thinking about the world very differently than they did prior to understanding the teachings of the Buddha. So you can see improvement as soon as 2 days, where you're starting to see gradual improvement to the condition of the mind. Because you'll know situations where you were once angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And when you're training your mind in these teachings and you see the improvement to the condition of your mind, you'll know it's these teachings that are helping you to do that, because you're no longer experiencing those discontent feelings in that same exact situation. And it's the Eightfold Path that is going to help guide you to this enlightened mental state. And that's why there's 8 spokes here. There's 8 individual spokes that are helping you to be able to remember the Eightfold Path. If an individual has learned the Eightfold Path in detail with the original words of the Buddha, and they see this, they'll understand and remember that this spoke here, the 12 o'clock position, represents right view. For those of you guys that know what that is, this is right view. Then you've got right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And each one of these factors, if you learn and practice them, they're going to guide you to this enlightened mental state where you'll see this gradual improvement to the condition of your mind, to your life, to your relationships, and so forth and so on. This is the escape out of the cycle of rebirth. So while this circle represents the cycle of rebirth, the 8 individual spokes represent the escape out of that. Because by getting to enlightenment in this life, you're going to gradually see the improvement to the condition of your mind. And having gotten to enlightenment, an individual won't experience rebirth over and over and over again. At the end of this life, it'll be your last life. There's no rebirth in the cycle of rebirth at the end of this life. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't about doing a bunch of really good things now in order to experience some better life after this. Instead, what the Buddha is teaching you how to do is how to get to a wonderful life now, right? In this life, so you can experience peace and joy now. So that's why you're learning, examining, and investigating his teachings intellectually. You're then reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. Then you're practicing the teachings, integrating these tools and techniques into your day-to-day life. And that's where you're seeing the transformation of your mind in your life. Your relationships will change around you as you're functioning in the world in a better and better way, in a wiser and wiser way. So because you're learning, reflecting, and practicing now, you see the results now. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get to a better life now. And having done so and cultivated the wisdom about this world that you need, then the mind will experience enlightenment, and you won't experience coming back into the world over and over and over again, because your mind is let go. You've cultivated the wisdom that you need here. So that's what these 8 individual spokes are there for, to represent this escape out of the cycle of rebirth. And this is the core central teaching that an individual would learn and grow and develop as they're making their way to enlightenment. As you first start off, that's usually one of the first teachings that you learn is the Eightfold Path. Then this particular Dhamma wheel, you'll see it in different places. This right here is a temple marker that if you look around the main building of a temple complex, we refer to that as a sala in Thailand. The Thai language, the big main building is called a sala. We might call it a main hall in Thai, or I'm sorry, in English. The whole complex is the temple, right? All the walls around this whole complex. We are now at the temple, but we're in a separate building. We're in a classroom. We're over there. That's the main sala, or the main hall over there. Around the main hall, they will have these temple markers, where at one time it was just a raw land, but then what they do is they drop these big concrete balls down into the ground in the 8 directions of the compass, and then they put these markers there to mark the 8 directions of the compass. And then they put a 9th ball in the middle of the floor of the main hall, so that there's 9 individual balls down into the ground, kind of marking out the land that this is where our main hall is. And now, if you're, say, new to a temple, like some of these temples are large, they're enormous, and you're going to a temple for the first time, and maybe there's some event that you're going there for, you would look for these temple markers in the 8 directions of the compass, and that's how you would know that this is where the main event is going to be. And typically what they do is they sit the Buddha statue in the west of the main hall. So like that Buddha image back there on the wall, it's in the west and it's looking towards the east, right? That's what all these temples are doing. They're putting the Buddha in the back, or not at the back, they're putting it at the west, and then the Buddha's looking towards the east. And this is the way that the Thais will do this here in Thailand. So you'll typically see that, and these markers will be there marking this out. But not all the markers are the same. They're all different. This happens to be a picture of a marker that uses the Dhamma wheel, but other temples might use other things. There's a temple that I take students to out in the forest temple, that uses lotus. They have like an image of a lotus flower instead of this. And each one of these things have different symbolism behind them. You'll sometimes see this particular wheel behind the head of a statue like this, because this Dhamma wheel is thought to be on the head of a Buddha. It's a figurative thing, that when an individual awakens to enlightenment who is a Buddha, and by the way, a Buddha is someone who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their lives to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that lifetime of that individual. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the 3 main criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. And this type of individual is very rare in the world. The last one that the world is currently aware of is over 2,500 years ago. So you can get to enlightenment, but you won't be a Buddha at that point. You'll be an enlightened being. So a Buddha is going to have gotten to enlightenment by themselves. You're going to need teachers or guides. They're going to dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings. Then they're going to preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So when a Buddha awakens in the world, and a Buddha is actually living in the actual world, this is the very best thing for humanity and for society, because now the wisdom that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment is very deep and very profound. A Buddha is going to have that very deep wisdom, and they're going to be able to share that with countless people. It's like what a Buddha does throughout their life is that it's like they're putting lights along the path to enlightenment and illuminating it and showing other people how to get to this enlightenmental state. So living during the lifetime of the Buddha is like the very best thing that you could ever experience, is living during the lifetime of a Buddha, because this individual would have deep wisdom about how to get to enlightenment. So when a Buddha awakens in the world, it's like humanity has taken a big step forward. It's like civilization has entered into a new era. And that's what this Dhamma wheel also symbolizes, that it's thought to figuratively be on the head of a Buddha, that they're going to have a flat spot on their head, and when they get to enlightenment, they reach up with their right hand and they figuratively turn this Dhamma wheel in the counterclockwise direction, representing humanity entering into a new era, kind of entering into a new time frame where now the wisdom to get to enlightenment is permeating in the world. It's shining in the world. So that's another symbol of this Dhamma wheel, that it's typically placed behind the head of a Buddha so that people can remember this thought of humanity stepping forward into a new era. So this is what's referred to as a Dhamma wheel. And you might see this again in various situations, whether it's like this or whether it's on artwork or other things like this. You can see this Dhamma wheel in a lot of different places. So do you guys have any questions on the Dhamma wheel? Anything you would like to ask, or anything that I've shared? No questions? Okay, let me check here online. See if you guys have any questions. Okay, yes, you've got audio, sure, wonderful. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. One thing I'll share here while we're talking, and you can see these pictures of these statues here, is the Buddha never taught anybody to make any statues of him. These statues that you see all over the world, they actually don't even represent the way that the Buddha looks, because the Buddha never told anybody to make a statue of him. And the people that did start making statues of him, they started making statues about 200 or 300 years after his death. So the people that actually started making statues, they didn't live during his lifetime, so they didn't even know what he looked like when they started making statues. The people that were practicing the Buddhist teachings came in contact with people in Greece around 200 or 300 years after the death of the Buddha. And they saw that the Greek people were making statues of their gods, and they were learning this craft and this technique. And the people that were Buddhists, that were practicing the Buddhist teachings, were like, who do we have to make a statue out of? Because we just learned this technique of how to make statues. Who can we make a statue out of? Oh, the Buddha. Let's make a statue of the Buddha, right? So they started making statues of the Buddha, and they just kind of depicted him the way that they thought he might have looked, because they didn't live during his lifetime. So this is why you see a crown on his head, that he actually didn't walk around with a crown on his head, because he was a prince destined to become a king, but he walked away from that. He went into a life of homelessness and basically shared his teachings with countless people, living with his students and so forth. The way he looked is just like you and I. He looked like a human being. That picture on the back of the room that you guys see there, the one that I use up here, this is an artistic representation of how he looked during his lifetime. There's an artist here in Thailand that looked at the original teachings of the Buddha, because it's described in his original teachings of what he looked like. And this artist depicted how this person looked. The Buddha originated in a region that we refer to as Nepal, and he taught in northeast India. Oftentimes when we see these statues, he'll look very royal, he'll look very grandiose, but also he'll usually look like the culture of the people that actually created it. So if you see a Buddha image in China, for example, the Buddha will look very Chinese, right? Or if you see him depicted in Japan, he will look very Japanese. Or here in Thailand, people will say, oh, those statues look very Thai, right? Because this is the artist trying to represent the Buddha to look like themselves, because that's how they think about how human beings look, is they must look like us, right? Because if you're an artist living in China, for example, and over the last however many period of time of your life, you've only been around Chinese people, for example, you might think everybody is looking Chinese, perhaps, because, maybe 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, people didn't travel as much. It was only the local people that they actually saw. So someone will depict typically the statue of the Buddha to look like their own ethnicity. But what this Thai artist did is it represented an individual that looks like they're from Nepal or Northeast India. This is how an individual would look. So these statues that you see, while they do represent certain periods of time during the lifetime of the Buddha, and if you understand the story of his life, life, then you will understand what those statues represent. But in terms of the appearance of the individual that they're depicting, that's not what the Buddha actually looked like. And it's important for you to understand that, because some of these statues that you see are very elaborate. They have all this magnificent gold and all these clothes. He looks very royal. He walked around with simple robes like this. There's actually a story that a student gave him a very elaborate fabric during his lifetime, very fancy, very expensive fabric. And he accepted the gift from his student, because that's what he teaches, is to accept generosity. He turned and gave it to one of his students, and he said, go rip this up into pieces and sew it back together and then make a robe out of it. Because he wasn't interested in walking around being glorified and wearing fancy clothing. So when you see these statues making him look very fancy and very elaborate, this isn't the way that he dressed. He dressed very simply and very basic and very humble. So here's the way that he looks. And if you would like to get this image, you can actually get it from our website. You can download it, make it maybe as a wallpaper on your phone, because maybe it'll remind you when you pick up your phone to speak nice, to speak kind. Maybe your mom's on there yelling and hollering at you, and you're like, okay, let me be calm, let me be peaceful, right? This can kind of help you. If you'd like to download it, it's on our website. You can get this high resolution picture. We have posters. If you guys would like to get any posters, you're welcome to get those. I actually have some up here rolled up. If you would like to get one, you're welcome to have one where you can have this little picture. Maybe it'll help remind you to meditate. Maybe it'll help you to speak nice to your mom and your dad and people like this. Maybe when you're thinking about, hurting your boss, you'll be like, no, I'm not going to hurt my boss. I don't want to do that, right? So these statues, you're going to see plenty of them. And when I take students on tour, that's what I'm doing here, is I'm touring some students around. I will typically teach them the meaning and the life story of the Buddha through these statues, because each one of these are depicting a certain time frame in his life. So if you're ever interested in going on that tour, I will usually do it once a month at the beginning of the month, and you can see our schedule when I'm actually doing that. Okay, so here, this is the next symbol. This is a lotus flower. You might see these throughout your journey in the Buddhist world, that people will use lotus flowers, actually real lotus flowers. If you look back there, you'll see like wooden lotus flowers that are depicting lotus flowers. Off to the right, those golden things on the right, those are like depicting lotus flowers. You can see it in artwork. You'll see lotus flowers. You'll see bloomed lotus flowers like this, but you also see closed lotus flowers. What this is symbolizing, whenever you see a bloomed lotus flower, it's symbolizing enlightenment. And when you see a closed lotus flower, it's symbolizing your potential to get to enlightenment. Because the way a lotus flower grows is a symbol of your growth and development on the path to enlightenment. If you know anything about a lotus flower, how it grows, it has these roots that are really deep down into the earth and holding on to the earth. Then there's this strong stalk that has to grow through this murky water, because usually they're in kind of murky water. Then they rise up above the water and they bloom. Right? So this is essentially symbolizing your journey to enlightenment, that your mind is holding on to this world, wanting the world to be a certain way, expecting for the world to be a certain way. And then you need to grow this strong practice. You need to grow this wisdom and dedication and diligence to grow through the murkiness of the world, because the world is out there killing and stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, taking drugs and intoxicants. You're going to need to grow above and beyond that with a strong practice of wisdom. And now as you grow through the murkiness of the world, you rise above that and you bloom into a lotus flower. So typically at the bottom of a statue of the Buddha, they will put a bloomed lotus flower. They will kind of carve it into the statue, signifying enlightenment. But not every lotus flower blooms. Like you can see here, this one isn't blooming, right? So not every lotus flower blooms. It depends on how strong your practice is, how much wisdom you develop. So when you see a closed lotus flower like this, what this is symbolizing is your potential, that you have the potential to get to enlightenment, but you just haven't grown and developed enough yet to be able to bloom. So you would like to grow and develop in order to be able to bloom. Right? So you've got the bloom lotus flower, which represents enlightenment itself, and that a being has gotten to enlightenment. So you might see people having bloom lotus flowers for the Buddha. But then when there's closed lotus flowers, this is representing the potential that you have to get to enlightenment. So any questions on this here? Okay, not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go to this one now. This one is just one that I actually got off of Google because I was interested in kind of showing you guys how artists really like to kind of be creative and imaginary, and they kind of create their own artwork and their own imagery. And if you understand a little bit of the symbolism of what I've been sharing with you so far, you can look at some creative thing that some artist has produced, and you can kind of figure out what they're trying to represent. Because what this artist has done is they've combined the first one, the Na, with the lotus flower, right? And both of these are a symbol of enlightenment. And this artist has represented it in this way. So even though I might not have ever taught you about this, for example, if you know what the Na is and you know what the lotus flower means, and then you see some creative thing that an artist has done, which that's what artists are known for, being creative, you can kind of look at it and decipher what the artist is trying to represent. Because sometimes when you go into these temples or when you see artwork, you're going to see different things that I didn't necessarily teach you. But if you can understand some of the basics of Buddhist art, then you can kind of interpret this and figure out what it is the artist is trying to represent. So this is here symbolizing enlightenment. And the artist didn't have to tell me that because I already know what the Na means and I already know what the lotus flower means. Okay. This is a statue that you'll often see at the base of stairs. This is, again, a tour that I was taking students on. Here at the base of the stairs, you see this big snake. This is referred to as a naga in English, or we might call it a serpent king, or the king of the serpents. There's actually a story behind this that I'll share with you, the story, and then I'll share with you why it's here, and I'll share with you kind of some lessons to extrapolate from what I share with you. But I'll just kind of preface it with saying, I don't know that this story is true, but I don't know that it's false either. It is in the original teachings of the Buddha. As you're going to hear, it's pretty wild what the story is, but nonetheless, if you listen to the story, when I get to the end of the story, there's certain lessons that are going to help you in life to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. So the story is that during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a serpent king, this large serpent that was very close to being reborn into the human world, so it could change itself to look like a human being. It could kind of transform itself to look like a human being. And what it would do is it would transform itself to look like a monk, where it had a robe on and it had a shaved hair and all these kinds of things. And it would go into where the Buddha was teaching. And the Buddha would be teaching these long discourses, these very long, teaching periods. And oftentimes what would happen is the students would fall asleep, that they would doze off. Because if you're learning for a really long time and your mind's working really hard, you could get kind of sleepy. And you might consider that to be disrespectful, but a Buddha understands how hard the mind is working and that this is not uncommon for students to fall asleep from time to time. And if that's what they need to do, then so be it. So the Buddha would just kind of wait as everybody would fall asleep. He would just patiently wait. And then when everybody would wake up, he would just start teaching again. Well, when everybody fell asleep and this snake was amongst them, looking like a monk, as they fell asleep, this snake started losing some of its awareness of mind because it's going to sleep. And now when it fell asleep, it transitioned to look back like a snake again. It didn't look like a monk and a human being anymore. Then slowly but surely, the ordained practitioners were waking up and they saw this big snake amongst them. And they got really scared and they got really fearful. And they ran and they went and got the Buddha, because an enlightened being isn't afraid. They don't have any fear in their mind whatsoever. So they went and got the Buddha. And the Buddha comes over there, and as he's coming over, the snake is starting to wake up. And he says to the snake, he's like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you here? And the snake's like, I want to learn your teachings. I want to get to enlightenment. And the snakes, and the Buddha says to the snake, I'm so sorry that you're in the animal world. You're not able to get to enlightenment from the animal world. You need to be in the human world or the heavenly world. But it looks like you're very close to getting to the human world, because apparently you can make yourself look like a human being. So it looks like in your next life, you might be a human being, and then you can learn my teachings. And the snake's like, no, I want to learn your teachings now. Like, I want to get to enlightenment now. And the snake's like, and the Buddha's like, oh, so sorry, you're not able to do that. And I'm just curious. I'm just wondering, there's a lot of people here that are experiencing fear. Would you be so kind as to leave so that they can learn and grow and develop and get to enlightenment? And maybe in your next life, you can learn and grow and develop and get to enlightenment. And the snake kind of reluctantly agrees with the Buddha and says, okay, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to go outside and I'm going to stand guard. And if anybody tries to come in to learn your teachings that has ill will in their mind, I'm not going to let them pass by, right? So this is what this is representing, and that's why you see this snake at the base of the stairs. Is this snake is kind of protecting the teachings of the Buddha and not allowing anybody with ill will to pass by. Okay, so I don't know that this story is true, but I don't know that it was false because I wasn't there, right? Scientists tell us that 99% of all animals that once existed no longer exist, that the animals that we see is only 1% of the animal world. So I don't know if in that 99%, if there was an animal that could potentially do this. I've never seen a snake transition itself to look like a human being. I've never seen that at all, right? So perhaps someday I will see that and maybe I will change my opinion, but I don't think this story is probably true. It might be something that people embellished along the way over 2,500 years of history. These books have been in different hands, but nonetheless, there's some lessons that you can extrapolate from this story. The first one is that thank goodness that you're a human being, because you can actually get to enlightenment. So when you pass by these snakes, it can remind you, thank goodness I'm human. Don't allow this human life to go to waste. Don't be complacent. Use this life, be dedicated and diligent to be able to train your mind and make your way to enlightenment. That's the first thing that you can remember. The second thing is that enlightened beings don't have fear, right? Those ordained practitioners who were learning from the Buddha, they weren't enlightened yet. That's why they had fear, and they went and got the Buddha. But the Buddha didn't have any fear. That's why he could talk to the snake and have no issues, because he knows he didn't cause harm to the snake, so the snake isn't going to try to cause harm to him, right? So he didn't have any fear. This is an individual who understands the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. They're not going to have any fear because they're not causing any harm. So that's the second thing you can remember. The third thing you can remember from this story is that when you go to the temple, it's important not to have any ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha. What it would mean to have ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha is to be interested in changing his teachings. If you change the teachings of a Buddha, this is going to cause harm to you and to countless people, because a Buddha has discovered the teachings that it takes to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And he spends his time, the rest of his life, illuminating this path and making it available to countless people. If somebody changes the teachings of the Buddha, it's like knocking over the lights and making it difficult for other people to know what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So whenever you're learning and trying to understand and practice the teachings of the Buddha, it's important not to be interested in changing his teachings, because that would cause harm to you, because you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment, and that will cause harm to other people because they won't be able to get to enlightenment with those changed teachings. So these are the three things that you can remember when you see this snake is thank goodness you're human. Don't allow this life to go to waste. Don't be complacent, right? An enlightened being doesn't have fear, so that's what's one of the things you'll be able to eliminate as part of your journey to enlightenment, and to not have ill will towards the teachings, being interested to change his teachings. And this will all help you through understanding when you walk up the stairs. This is a temple that I take students to. There's 306 steps. If you would ever like to go, you can go on your own. You might have already been. It's called Wat Doi Sutep. That previous temple that I was showing here, this is Wat Umong. This is a forest temple. These are temples that I take students to at different times. So do you guys have any questions on this Serpent King or this Naga or the story that I just shared with you guys? Let's see if we have any questions here. Okay, I don't see any questions. All right, so I think I have maybe one more. Yeah, this is the last one. So here, this is a tree. This is the actual tree that the Buddha sat at and contemplated for 7 weeks of whether or not he should actually share his teachings. He was involved in 6 years of training his mind, and he ultimately got to enlightenment. And he knew he got to enlightenment because his mind was peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. When you get to enlightenment, you will know that you've actually experienced enlightenment. And when he got to enlightenment, he knew that what he had discovered was very different than what anybody else was teaching at the time. What people were teaching at the time was to hang themselves upside down from trees, to lay on beds of nails, to pierce their body with metal implements, to starve themselves and things like this. And what the thought was at the time was that if you could essentially cause physical pain to the body and you could overcome that physical pain within your mind, that you would get to enlightenment. And the Buddha knew that that wasn't true, even though countless people were teaching it, that people even teach it today. When you're in meditation and you're experiencing pain, sometimes people say, oh, just breathe through the pain, invite the pain in, observe the pain, look at the pain, make friends with the pain, embrace the pain. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught, because as long as the body is experiencing pain, this is the body explaining to you and helping you to be able to see that there's something wrong, and it would be wise to maybe change position in your meditation. But nonetheless, during the lifetime of the Buddha, and even now, some people try to inflict pain on the physical body, and the thought is that if you can overcome that pain within your mind, you would get to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. You're not training your mind to overcome physical pain necessarily. You're training it to get rid of the mental anguish and the difficulties and struggles within your own mind. So the Buddha's teachings focus on the mind. It doesn't focus on training the body. There's other things that focus on training the body, like yoga and tai chi, martial arts like kung fu and karate, things like this train the body. And it also trains the mind to a certain degree as well. But nonetheless, the Buddha focused solely on training the mind. And that was radically different than what anyone else was doing at the time. So he was trying to contemplate and decide, figure out whether or not he was going to share his teachings with others. So he hangs out at this tree for 7 weeks, trying to decide, should he go back to the royal family or should he go share his teachings? Because it took him 6 years to get to enlightenment, and he wasn't really sure whether the world was ready to learn his teachings or not. So ultimately, he did decide to share his teachings, but it was hanging out at this tree for 7 weeks that he kind of figured out that, yeah, I should go share my teachings in the world. And people will typically attribute this tree to the location where the Buddha actually attained enlightenment. The Buddha himself actually said, yeah, you can consider this tree the place where I attained enlightenment, although he really attained enlightenment over a 6-year period. It's not like you sit down and you meditate and then you instantly get to enlightenment. This isn't actually the way it happens. It's not like a light switch. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. The Buddha teaches you about this. And you know that to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been that way. Whether it's learning to read, write, and speak English, it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Whether it's some job or occupation that you do, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And the same thing's true about getting to enlightenment. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So this tree is attributed to where the Buddha attained enlightenment, even though he really attained it over a 6-year period. So this tree is considered to be somewhat of a special tree, and it's the original tree from during the lifetime of the Buddha. So it's over 2,500 years old. This tree is called a Bodhi tree in English. There's another name for it in Latin and different names. This is the shape of the leaf from that tree. In fact, here at this temple, we have one of these in the very front of the temple on your way out. If you look over to the left, there's a big tree there. Or if you look down on the ground, you might see some of these leaves there. It's the same exact leaf. So this leaf is a symbol of enlightenment because of the Buddha having contemplated here. They use this image of this leaf as a symbol of enlightenment. You can see this little thing here on the edge of the leaf. So if you ever see this leaf in person, or if you ever see artwork or something like this, this is what people use as a symbol to symbolize enlightenment itself. So you'll see this in a lot of different places. Sometimes what people do is they actually take little saplings off of this tree and they give it out to people, and then they take those little saplings and they go plant them places, and they'll say, like, this is a child of the original tree, essentially. I don't know that this particular tree is that, but if you go out there, you'll see this particular tree. It's quite big, the one that's here, and there's leaves all over the ground. You can pick one up and take it with you if you like, if you're interested, but it's impermanent. It's going to fall apart. It's going to degrade over time. So do you guys have any questions about this tree or this leaf? Anything you guys would like to know about that? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to end class here by thanking all of you guys for coming. Thank you for being interested in understanding the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for joining us today. If you guys would ever like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. We have classes here Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. These are regular classes that you can just come and show up for. We also have courses that go Monday through Friday. You can see them on our calendar over there on the bulletin board, where you can get more in-depth into the teachings of the Buddha. And you can even learn them online through our live stream, through our video recordings, our podcasts, and things like this. Because you can get rid of your anger. You can get rid of your frustration, your sadness, your sorrow, your grief. All of these things can be eliminated from the mind, but you need the wisdom of how to actually do that. And if that's what you're interested in doing, I'm motivated to be able to help you. And everything that I do is available at no cost, whether it's the books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats, because I have loving kindness and compassion for the world, and I would like to see more and more people to be able to experience this enlightened mental state. So I'm motivated to be able to help you, and I've worked to remove as many of the barriers as possible, as many of the obstacles as possible. That all you need is determination, dedication, and diligence, and you'll be able to gradually cultivate the wisdom that you need to train your mind and experience this enlightened mental state. So whatever you guys decide to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day, and perhaps I'll see you next time. Sawadee-ka. Jai Jian. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.